Hi, and welcome to class 18. So we're getting pretty close to the end here, aren't we? Uh, Today, just so you know, we'll talk about the difference between disinterested and uninterested. So, uninterested is sometimes what people are in class. It means that you're not engaged, or you're bored, or you're unconcerned. So, when I drone on and on, you could become uninterested. Disinterested, however, means having no stake in the matter. For example, when you're arguing with somebody, you might bring in a disinterested person to help settle the issue. So think about maybe when you were small and you were having an argument with a friend or a sibling and over a toy or candy or what you were going to do. And a parent or another adult came along and helped you figure out how to settle the matter. That would be a disinterested party, someone who has no stake in the outcome, but is willing to mediate an experience for you. So that's the difference between the two. So try to remember that because it's important that you don't use disinterested to mean uninterested, right? All right, today I'm going to do a quick lecture, an introduction to the beats and to Howl, and then below the video you'll find a written part of the lecture on themes, forms, and devices. So this video will be pretty short, I think, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about the beats. And there you see four of the most important beats, the most well-known beats. This literary movement called the Beat Generation actually burst into American consciousness with two books published in the late 1850s. The first is Allen Ginsberg's Howl and Other Poems. We're going to focus there. It stirred controversy and an obscenity trial for Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who offered copies for sale in his San Francisco bookstore. The second book was Jack Kerouac's On the Road, published in 1957. This was the year after Howl. And if you haven't read On the Road, I highly suggest you take a look at it when you have time. But it had a profound cultural effect when it was published. It was like the Beat Generation's manifesto. All right, let's go back to Howl. Now, to understand Howl, it's important to have a clear grasp of Ginsberg's contemporary moment and what so angered him throughout this piece. Because if you've already read it, you realize he's angry throughout. It was written after the Second World War and during an economic boom. And despite this just positive environment, American society was still broadly unaccepting of people deemed other. So those who did not conform to mainstream religious, ethnic, and social standards of the time. The poem was penned during a period in which a variety of equal rights movements, like the LGBTQ liberation movement, were just getting off the ground. This period also saw the criminalization of homosexuality, which was at that time considered a psychiatric disorder. This wasn't so long ago. So when I was young, it was a psychiatric disorder. I think it changed in 1973. But the inhumane treatment of men and women deemed insane is detailed throughout the poem. So, for example, in line 106, in which the poet describes shocks that will never return your soul to its body again from its pilgrimage to a cross in the void. The poet also references the practice of instantaneous lobotomy. If you don't know, that was when they did a brain surgery and removed part of the brain or deadened part of the brain that changed personality. They often did that to the criminally insane, but also to gay people. Ginsberg himself was institutionalized from 1949 to 1950 in a hospital where he met Carl Solomon, to whom he dedicated his poem, so you'll see his name in the poem, and where doctors tried to cure him of his homosexuality, and we all know that doesn't work at this point. It didn't work for Ginsberg either. So Ginsberg's first public performance of Howl was in 1955, which was a turning point in American literary history. So he'd created a new, radically different space and style for writing, and he pushed back against the narrow modes of expression acknowledged by the literary establishment. So here's where we see another turn in our kind of literary traditions. The poem, which must be heard to be truly appreciated and understood, reclaimed the strength and influence of the poet's singing voice. It denied those who insisted poetry in print was most important. So think about the beginning of this kind of performance poetry, right? Ginsberg used chants to modulate moods and build rhythmic power through systems of sound compelling audience participation. I was actually lucky enough to hear Ginsberg read this poem. God, I don't know how long ago it was, a long time. I was pretty young, in Long Beach. So I'm going to guess maybe it was 1980 something. And it was wild, although it was also rough. Howl represents the birth of the 1960s counterculture, endeavoring to extol its ethics, explain its meaning, celebrate its beauty, and defend its ostensibly aberrant and rebellious behavior. I'm sure you know about the 60s, which was a really wild time. The driving force of the poem is the message of community and tolerance as part of the ideal America. He's one of the first to acknowledge sexual deviance, radical activists, extraordinary unconventional artists, and experimenters with forbidden substances. So this is also, the 60s, think Timothy Leary, Haight-Ashbury, kind of the tune in, turn on, drop out sort of time period. Ginsberg wanted a country that accepted eccentricity and individualism. He wanted to redeem the society he saw as built of greed and materialism. All right, so as I said, you can continue reading this lecture just below the video, and I will see you next time. Happy reading.